These 5 books are some of the most loved and hated books in all of sci-fi. Why are they so polarizing? Let's find out. Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan and welcome to Words in Time. Let's get right into it with our first book, The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu, the first book in the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy. Decades after the Chinese Revolution, strange things start happening to prominent scientists, which could be linked to a secret mission sending messages into space. So why is this book so polarizing? Well, to start, this is some rather hard sci-fi. This book does lean quite heavily into some scientific concepts and does take some time in order to explain some of the physics and science involved. So if you are intrigued by those physics problems, I think you'll find the explanations to be really interesting and something that you'll really want to dive into. But if you're not accustomed to hard sci-fi, some of the technical descriptions might make the story drag for you. So while the book is focusing on these concepts, that means there is less time to develop the characters. The characters in this book are rather thin. So if you are a character-only reader, do not stop here. Do not collect $200 and go straight to the next book on your TBR. I will say that in books 2 and 3, the character development does improve a little bit, but that's still not the primary focus of the series. And lastly, there are elements of this book that could be considered somewhat nihilistic. I think some people would say that this book puts forth a number of ideas as opposed to trying to put forth a particular message, and you have to try and grapple with and make sense of those different and opposing ideas. But I can certainly understand why some of the themes might not resonate with everyone. So am I a lover or a hater? Well, personally, I really enjoyed the first book, and I absolutely loved books 2 and 3 of the trilogy. I understand that the writing might be a little bit cold, and whether that's a translation issue, cultural issue, or just Cixin Liu's writing style, it didn't really bother me too much, because while I didn't necessarily connect a lot with all of the characters, I was always intrigued and my interest was always held by the ideas. The concepts in this book are absolutely mind-blowing. I can't tell you how many times I was reading these books, especially in The Dark Forest and Death's End, that I just had to sit and think for a moment as my brain was just absolutely melted by the scope and the size and the scale and the monstrous ideas that Cixin Liu was putting on the page. So this definitely won't appeal to everyone, but if you are an ideas first, concept first type sci-fi reader, I think you should check out The Three-Body Problem. Moving on to our next book, we have Neuromancer by William Gibson. Neuromancer follows a washed-up data thief as he gets hired for one last job that brings him up against a powerful artificial intelligence. So why is Neuromancer polarizing? Well, the first reason is that the book uses quite a lot of terminology and it doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't take time to explain what those terms mean. It drops you in this world, in this cyberpunk world, and expects you to know what is going on and expects you to catch up. And there are pros and cons to this because it can leave some readers feeling a little lost, a little confused, but also it is quite good that it doesn't rely too heavily on exposition. If I was writing a book for a 1950s audience that was set in 2022 and I wrote a sentence along the lines of, "I plugged in the external hard drive," a portable device that you can plug into a computer in order to provide yourself with extra storage capacity, that might be helpful to a 1950s audience that doesn't know what an external hard drive is. But in the world of 2022, anyone around me would be like, yeah, why are you taking the time to explain? We all know what an external hard drive is, my guy. So some people would have preferred explanations of all the terminology, whereas others appreciate Gibson staying true to that world. The second reason is that with Gibson's writing style, it's not always easy to follow exactly what is going on. And the story does jump around a little bit, so if you're having trouble following exactly what just happened, it's kind of too late. We've already moved on to the next thing. Gibson isn't going to slow down in order to explain things for you. So some people find that this makes things a little bit harder to follow in terms of the plot, but it also can reward a kind of deeper, slowing style of reading to really get most out of this intriguing cyberpunk world that William Gibson created. So am I a lover or a hater? Well, I have to be honest, when I first read this book, I was somewhat disappointed. I did find it rather confusing, and that made it hard for me to get invested in the story and to connect to the characters. However, after I finished reading it, I did do a little bit more research. I read up on the book a little bit, and that uncovered some new layers to the book for me. Some things clicked into place, and I started to appreciate it a little bit more. While I can't say that this is a book that I love, it is one that I respect for its ambitiousness and its influence on the genre. Next, with our third book, we have The Fall of Hyperion by Dan Simmons, the second book in the Hyperion duology. In Hyperion, we follow 7 characters that are on a pilgrimage to the planet of Hyperion to visit the Time Tombs, which are moving backwards in time and are guarded by the Shrike. In The Fall of Hyperion, we get the conclusion of those journeys. So why is this book polarizing? Well, the first reason is that it uses a completely different narrative structure to the one used in Hyperion. Hyperion is quite famous for using a Canterbury Tales type structure, where each of the pilgrims tell their backstory along the way as to what brought them to Hyperion. So readers that really like that Tales format, those short stories, are a little disappointed when those are not used in the second book, whereas other readers appreciate getting a little bit more of a focus on the present timeline. There is also a new storytelling device that is used, which I won't spoil for you, but some readers kind of get used to, they get adjusted to after around the first 100 pages, and for some readers it just doesn't work for them at all. The second reason is that in some ways this book is a love letter to John Keats. And it doesn't just appear in references, but actual characters and storylines are influenced by John Keats as well. And for some readers, this is a beautiful, poetic homage, whereas for others, it's like, yeah, Dan, we get it. And finally, when it comes to the conclusions for each of the Pilgrim storylines, some of them have pretty clear resolutions, whereas a couple of them are a little bit like, hey, wait, what exactly just happened? And those style of story endings definitely clicked for some readers more than others. So am I a lover or a hater? Well, I absolutely love The Fall of Hyperion. It's one of my favorite books of all time. I know it takes a little bit to get going, and I know Dan Simmons makes some odd choices in this book, but I don't care about any of its supposed flaws, because for me, the high points were insanely high. I had some incredible emotional reactions to this book, whether it was shock and horror, pure heartbreak, or some form of existential crisis. This book absolutely shook me in the best possible ways. If you're interested in Hyperion and you don't know whether to continue after you've read the first one, please go ahead and read The Fall of Hyperion. I know it's polarizing, I know it's different, but I think it is worth it in the end. And next we have The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe, part 1 of Book of the New Sun. In The Shadow of the Torturer, Severian tells us the tale of his life, starting as a young apprentice in the Guild of the Torturers on a planet called Earth, URTH, where he is exiled for committing the ultimate sin as a torturer, showing mercy towards his victim. So why is this book polarizing? Well, the first reason is that this book can be rather confusing. The events that are actually occurring on the page are somewhat easy to follow. However, as this book is set far into the future, the words that Severian is using to describe certain events on the page are not exactly what we think that they mean. What they mean to him might be different to what they mean to us. So there's a lot of unpacking to do here. There's a lot of layers that you have to go digging for in order to make sense of what is really happening in The Shadow of the Torturer. And not only do you have to go digging into this story, a lot of elements only become apparent and more clear once you reach the later installments in the Book of the New Sun. The second reason is that the plot itself isn't super exciting. If you are someone that enjoys exploring themes, literary allusions, and searching for deeper meaning, then I think there's going to be a lot for you to sink your teeth into in The Shadow of the Torturer. But if you are looking for a bit of an adventure tale, then you're probably not going to find that here. And lastly, we have the character of Severian. Severian makes some choices in this book which is going to have some readers intrigued, whereas other readers just can't stand him. So am I a lover or a hater? Well, it is hard to judge this book because I do believe it is just one part of the Book of the New Sun, but personally I chose not to continue. And that is primarily because of the main character of Severian. When you are reading a first-person POV story, you don't necessarily have to like or love that character, but I do think you need to be interested or intrigued or have a reason to want to know what happens next to that character. And personally, I just found some of Severian's attitudes and actions to be very off-putting. I did not connect with that character and I was not super invested in finding out what happens next. I do see the appeal of the book and I was very intrigued by the world. Unfortunately, it just wasn't one that I wanted to explore through the eyes of Severian. And finally, we have Cloud Atlas by David Mitchell. In Cloud Atlas, we follow 6 different storylines written in 6 different genres across 6 different timelines. Along the way, the book reveals how these characters are connected, how their fates intertwine, and how their souls drift across time like clouds across the sky. So why is this book polarizing? Well, with such a unique structure, it's inevitable that it will work better for some readers than others. Some people think it is pure genius, whereas other people find it a little bit frustrating. For example, if you really like the first story, you have to wait to the very end to get to the resolution of that story. Also, story number 6 tends to be one of the less popular stories, and we get 2 of those back to back. So even though it's only about a 1/6 of the book, it kind of feels like it takes forever to get through that section back to story number 5, which personally was one of my favorites. The second reason is that with 6 completely different styles, some people think that David Mitchell nailed all of them, whereas others found that some hit better than others. For example, like me, if you're a really big fan of sci-fi, only 2 of the 6 stories are really sci-fi. If you really enjoy detective stories, there's a detective story for you to enjoy, but the others might not be as interesting to you. One of the stories is quite comedic, so if you don't like that sense of humor, you might not like that story as much. If you love that sense of humor, you might have wished that the other 5 stories were comedic as well. And lastly, if you go into this book expecting an intricate plot with some big twists and reveals, you might end up being a little disappointed. Whereas if you like books that are a little more artistic, literary, and you like taking the time to explore the thematic elements of the book, then I think you could really connect with Cloud Atlas. So am I a lover or a hater? Well, while not every element of this book worked for me, there were parts that I absolutely loved. Story number 5, Sonmi 451, is one of my favorite stories that I've ever read. And the ending of this book I found to be incredibly powerful. It ends with one of my all-time favorite book quotes. So there are 5 of the most polarizing books in all of sci-fi. Did you love them? Did you hate them? Let me know in the comments. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe. If you really enjoyed the video, consider becoming a patron, and you can find more sci-fi content over here.